Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of ScreenFlow Live. Today we are going to share with you an interview I did a little while back with Andy Orsow from InVision, and he is a wonderful power user of ScreenFlow and can really show you some cool stuff. And we talk a lot about just how he got started, what types of things he does with ScreenFlow, how he learned it, and then he even shares a few of his power tips. So we hope this will be a valuable interview for you. We were very excited that Andy was willing to be interviewed. He sat down with me a while back, and I'm excited to share this with you. We'll be probably putting some blog posts together on this interview and a few other things just to share, get other people involved with it. I think there's great information, and Andy's a wonderful guy with a lot of experience and wisdom to share. So without further ado, we're going to jump into that interview, and we'll be available on the comments. If you have questions, we'll take questions at the end of the interview. So I hope you enjoy it. It's about 20-30 minutes. So stay tuned and enjoy the show. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you on the show and just kind of share your wisdom and experience with screencasting. And we, hopefully our ScreenFlow users, as well as anyone who's out there creating content, can get some value out of this, especially with someone who's so far along the path like yourself. So first, maybe we should start by telling folks who you are and what you do and where you're at.
Sure. My name is Andy Orsow. I work for a company called InVision. We're a design, collaboration, and workflow platform. And I'm our video lead there. I live in Portland, Oregon. And it's amazing because it's actually sunny here right now.
Nice. So in your job at InVision, what are the primary things that you usually do, like on a day-to-day basis?
So on a day-to-day basis, I handle everything and anything video for the most part. So sometimes that's trying to help source vendors for upcoming events, live events that we're doing. Sometimes that's producing, writing, creating my own product videos, screencasts. Sometimes that's creating educational and support content. Basically, if it's video, I probably have something to do with it.
One thing I really like about InVision is just everything from top to bottom. Your website, your content is just so well designed, so curated. I mean, it looks amazing. It's clearly well thought out. You have some very talented people, including yourself there, that just put a lot of thought and care into the stuff you guys post and publish. So I think you guys are doing a great job. Is there, what's your background? How'd you get into this?
I got into this in kind of a roundabout way. My background is in design. So I came to work for InVision as a designer because I used InVision all day long, every day at the job I was at previously. And once I got on the team, I started taking on some other responsibilities. So we were really small back then. We were like 12 or 15 people, and now we're getting close to 200. So people wore a lot more hats back then. And so I started writing our feature announcement blog posts, and one day our CEO Clark asked me to make a video for one of these upcoming announcements, and I said sure. I was the new guy, and I had never really made any type of video like that. Yep. And the rest is history. And it was not a good video, but I learned a lot, and I'm sure that's stuff that we can talk about later on. But yeah. So, anyways, after that, I was the de facto guy that we have a new video we need to make. Let's have Andy do it. And so eventually, it turns out I really like doing it, and now it's evolved into one of my main priorities here at the company.
Got it. So, how long have you been doing that, or kind of put this in time for us?
Sure. I've been with the company for a little over 2 years. So I would say I've been doing these types of videos for 2 years. And that's that can be a pretty frequent basis. It depends on, it's usually tied to different product announcements. And for those that know us, we launch a lot of stuff. So there are certain times when we'll launch 3 videos in a month. Other times it might just be one, but there's usually something to be working on definitely.
Well, that's really cool. Like, I mean, just 2 years. I mean, that's a lifetime when it comes to doing this type of stuff. I'm sure that you've have a lot of valuable lessons you can share with us. So I think I'd be excited to get into that. And actually, one of my kind of relates to the next question, which is when, like, at what point did you discover ScreenFlow in the process? Like, as you were starting, was your first video done with ScreenFlow, or did you kind of come to ScreenFlow later? When did it enter the picture?
I came to ScreenFlow later. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but I know my first one was some combination of QuickTime and iMovie. And it was a total nightmare, I believe would be a proper way to put it. I say total nightmare in the perspective of once I found and started using ScreenFlow and understood the program, it was like, okay, this is a thing that was made to do this versus here's a program that was not intended to do this.
So it might have been a little bit refreshing when you finally found like the right tool for the job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also because I think I kind of abused ScreenFlow a little bit. I think people are sometimes surprised they think that I'm using After Effects for a lot of our videos, and sometimes I do for certain things, but I really try to rely on ScreenFlow as much as possible. And people are usually surprised that certain things are done in ScreenFlow.
Glad to hear that you're pushing the limits with that. I think, did you find that, like, as you began screencasting, was there a process that you later refined? Like, how did you start doing it versus how you're kind of doing it now?
Yeah. When I started as a lot of people probably do. You just boot up QuickTime, start capturing your screen, and try to talk through your whole video in one take and do everything on the screen at the same time. That pretty quickly you understand that that's a bad way of doing it. I might have done my whole first video like that, or at least a good handful of hours of like takes trying to make it happen, and then quickly realized like, okay, no, something has to change. But I didn't really have a formal process. So I think I wrote a script for that video after a couple hours of trying and stumbled on what's more now my process. But I'm a big fan of, first off, scripting everything, especially because you often have stakeholders with this stuff. It's not just me creating it in a vacuum. So it's a big waste of time if you go through the whole video just off the cuff and then get feedback and they say, maybe you should phrase it this way. That's a lot of work to redo. Yes, exactly. Which, yeah. I won't. We do tend to revise some things as we go along, but that's the beauty of recording things separately. So if we do decide that we want to change a sentence later on, it's not a big deal. So yeah, our process now is write a script. I prefer to do a 2-column system a lot of the time, where you just, you have what you see and what you hear. And that way, that stuff is usually pretty clear in my mind because I've been doing this stuff for long enough. But just to make sure everybody's on the same page, here's what I'll be saying and here's what's going to be happening on screen while that's happening. I find that's pretty helpful. And then after that, you usually just dive right in. And get at least a quick kind of rough draft out there. And I also find that the process of recording my voiceover early on, actually usually when I share the script, I'll record a draft voiceover as well. That usually helps me refine the script even further before I submit it, because there's stuff that you gloss over or things that you tell yourself like, oh, that's not that weird of a sentence.
That's cool. I mean, it seems like, this process is a little, obviously you get faster as you've done it more, but, from beginning to end, like 2-minute video, how long do you find that's usually taking you, like from concept to completed?
That's a really tough call. I mean, I subscribe to, I don't know, I think it's like one of those laws or theories or something that a task can be done in whatever amount of time is allowed for it. Like if I have to get a 2-minute video done in under 6 hours, great, you know. But there are certainly other times when we'll work on a 2-minute video that has a lot going on and has a lot riding on it, that might take like at least a span of 30 hours of a work week. Now there's a lot of stuff that goes on in between those 30 hours, different projects, different just team communication, that kind of stuff. I don't track my hours too tightly, but I do know that, there are some times when you'll spend a whole week on something relatively short, but the end result is a lot better than if I had just spent, a handful of hours on it. In the same breath, some of my favorite videos are ones that I cranked out really, really quickly and just worked. So there's, it's a bit of a science, but it's also definitely an art.
So it's the creative process. That's what's fun about this. Cool. Well, you seem to have a pretty good system figured out by now. Are you finding what's the most challenging these days for you? What's the most challenging part of that process? I should rephrase.
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, the most challenging thing is always time management, especially once you have enough projects on your plate. Like, all right, we need to do X, Y, and Z. How are we going to do it? But that's a pretty easy answer to give. So let me dig here for a second. I would say my biggest challenge is just trying to continue to push things and to continue to improve stuff along the way. So sometimes that part of that is exploring new different parts of ScreenFlow and trying to push that envelope, and trying to see how can we make this even more mind-boggling with, within the constraints of the product. And then, time management is usually a big challenge.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with that for sure, especially when things are so busy and you have so many more ways to interrupt your attention now. So one question I have is, that's come up, as we're doing more videos to try to outreach, and as I've done more videos personally, is the issue of a single camera. So you mentioned in the planning phase that you like to show, what you're going to say and what's on screen. If you have a kind of a talking head section, you kind of have to, and you only have a single camera, you either need to nail everything in a single take, or you have these weird jump cuts. Is there anything you do to work around stuff like that or segments like that as you were creating videos? What's your strategy around that type of thing?
Yeah. Usually I'm not great at nailing a super long take. So I'm absolutely the guy who sits in front of the camera and reads a chunk of a script maybe 5-6 times and then moves on to the next thing. So one thing that I usually rely on is creating little moments where it's almost like a multicam, where you cut and you crop and zoom in a little bit on the frame. And while you might lose a little bit of quality if you're shooting with, an HD camera, like it's not the worst, especially if people aren't watching in full screen all the time. That effect is going to be pretty minimized. So I definitely do that. If you watch some of my videos on YouTube with InVision, I have a series called Design Snacks. And that's just one camera, and you'll see me kind of jump around the frame a little bit. And that's usually a completely different take when it cuts. And then of course you can cover that stuff up with B-roll of your actual product or of whatever you're making your video about, your screencast about. Just lay that over those jump cuts and those weird moments. But also planning ahead for it too. Like I think once you get enough under your belt, you're going to know this is a really long shot. This is a big chunk of text. Do we really think that it's reasonable to have this be one seamless shot, or do we need to add things in there to spice it up?
Totally. And then you're like, but I'm nailing this take. It's all one take. Let's show this. But no, edit always wins.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a really good tip, is that even if you have nailed the take, you may still want to cut away. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you talked about your process, how it's changed. Tell us about your setup. Like, what are some of the essential tools in your studio? What does your studio look like, and what are some things you just couldn't do without?
Sure. Well, thankfully, since it's just screencasting, the studio setup doesn't have to be super intense. I have a handful of LED panel lights that I use for the on-camera stuff. But other than that, I have a Audio-Technica USB mic that I'm using right now that I love. It's like $60 or something like that. And I think the quality is pretty phenomenal for that price, especially because I'm just going USB right into the computer, not going through a preamp, not going XLR. It's just direct in. And I think it sounds pretty good. A Retina display. That's the killer thing for screencasting, I think. If you can manage to get one, if that's part of your budget, it's going to open up a lot more opportunities for you in the editing process, because all of a sudden you can zoom in 200% and you're not losing quality. And to me, that was like I was already doing that kind of stuff, but sacrificing quality because I knew that that's what I wanted in my edit. But yeah, moving over to Retina has been fantastic.
So what is your kind of workstation computer? Are you working on your laptop? Like we're Mac users as ScreenFlow users. So until we come to Windows, if that happens, we'll, get there. But for now, everyone kind of chooses their Mac of choice. What's yours?
I am on a 13-inch Retina MacBook Pro right now, and it handles things pretty well. I have my moments of regret of like, oh, I should have bought maybe a little bit more of a workhorse, but it certainly gets the job done. Even editing like HD video, it works great.
We'll do two. This is a two-parter. So what is some hard-earned advice for new screencasters or ScreenFlow users? Like, what would you kind of pass along to them?
Sure.
And then the second part, sorry, is what's the silliest part? What's the silliest thing you've ever done as a screencaster, or biggest mistake?
Okay, I'll attack the first one because I don't silliest thing. That's a tough one. But as far as hard won expertise goes, there's a couple things. They're not super intuitive. One is, if you have the option when you're importing, if you're importing real video, not screencast footage, finding the right video codec to use to make editing in ScreenFlow as easy as possible. You guys have a really good blog post or article about this, but I had to go digging for a little bit because I was importing just regular, I think like MP4 footage or H.246 footage. Or 264, and it was a little choppy at my edit points, and it made it difficult to figure out like how is this looking.
Right.
But then I found an article on your site that said to export using either I want to say like animation setting for a QuickTime export,
animation or ProRes.
ProRes. Yeah. So yeah, using ProRes or animation when you're bringing stuff into ScreenFlow is going to make your life a lot easier when you're bringing in actual video.
What's the so if you bring in actual video from a camera or something like that, what's your transcoding process like?
So we'll use Design Snacks for an example. I set up my studio, I film myself talking through the entire thing. And then I bring that into Adobe Premiere, and I do a rough edit and color correction and, fix any like background stuff, because I usually blow out the background for like a pure white look, but sometimes you have to correct a little bit of stuff back there. So I do all that in Premiere, and then I export that kind of rough edit as one single video file from there, and then bring that into ScreenFlow.
Do you have any advice as far as managing your timelines, or what about audio waveforms and stuff like that? Are you using those to edit a lot? Do you have any special trips or tips that you use in ScreenFlow or in your ScreenFlow workflow to help with that?
Nothing too special with audio waveforms. Obviously, I always love to edit on the beat. So sometimes waveforms can be helpful with that, but usually it's just kind of listening and using my arrow keys to go frame by frame and listen for when that beat hits and then make sure that my edit lines up with that. Love the arrow keys, love holding down shift and left and right to skip faster frames, I believe. Another piece of hard won advice is to use snapback actions. Is that the name? Is that the name for it? I went way too long without using snapback actions, and when I found them, I just wanted to kiss my computer. I love those. Those are awesome.
Great piece of advice. So what's the silliest or most foolish thing you've ever done on screencast? What's the biggest mistake you ever made? Maybe it's just using QuickTime and, iMovie to try to do a screencast.
Yeah, I honestly think it was because the amount of stress and sweating and like nerve-wracking tension that was going through me when I was making that first video was ridiculous. And that's also the great thing about video that I've come to be like really comfortable with. It's the fact that we can do as many takes as we need to. And so once you kind of settle into that, I think the stress goes away a little bit because, okay, you didn't get it. Try it again.
I think that's a good rule. What, so, if you had to sum it up, like, what is it that you love most about ScreenFlow? Like, what is the problem it's solved, and what are the things that you just, you appreciate it for?
Sure. What I love most about ScreenFlow is that regardless of your skill level, you can accomplish basically whatever you want. So if you have little to no experience with ScreenFlow, you can jump in really quickly and kind of make your vision a reality. And then as you understand the product more, or if you have a deeper desire to create something more complex, it can do that too. And so that's why I think people get so surprised when I tell them, no, I didn't use After Effects for that video. I just used ScreenFlow. Their jaw hits the floor because they thought, oh, I thought it was just a screen recording application, but it's really a lot more than that. And yeah, that's what I like. Aside from going super crazy, you can do so much with the product that you wouldn't assume initially going into it, I don't think.
Okay. Are there any screencasters or ScreenFlowers or other content creators you like to watch or that inspire or influence your work?
Sure. I would say the people that influence my work are people doing bigger things than what I'm doing. So just like probably anybody making product videos, I love sandwich videos. They're the best. So there's a company called Sandwich Video, and it's founded by a guy named Adam Lissagor. I'm probably butchering his last name. And he started making videos for apps back in, I don't know, late 2000s, early like 2010, I'm not sure. But he started with his own app, self-made product video, one camera, really simple. But then he had friends who were working at startups that wanted videos. So then he made videos for Twitter, for Square, for like Airbnb was one of the early clients. And obviously those companies went on to be gigantic. And so they're a video production company that make promo videos primarily for cool apps and software products. So they're a great source of like inspiration for me because that's what I do. But they're to the point now where the scale of their operation is much larger, and they're producing these really, really top tier, just amazing videos with huge shoots and huge crews and multi-$100,000 budgets and whatever. And so, but their writing is great. I mean, once you watch enough of their videos, you can almost kind of tell when you're watching a sandwich video. So I don't know. I love them. Other than that, I like to pull from stuff that I just see like watching TV also. So especially from like a marketing partly from a marketing perspective. I just like to get inspired from different ads. Apple ads are always great. But also that kind of inspires maybe some ideas for editing. You might see something. So like I remember seeing like a Samsung Galaxy ad or something, and you have, these tight shots of a phone floating in a black background, and then it fades to black, and then it fades out of black, and it's like another part of the phone, and it fades back to black. And it's like just watching somebody execute on that level on like, a national campaign, you go, oh, like I see what they were doing there. Okay, tight crops of something moving slowly, fade to black, fade out. I can absolutely do that. So I just, like took a editing technique that was used by somebody way, smarter than me probably, and I can emulate that, and these things can look good and look better. And we're using the same techniques that people are using at a much a higher tier, I guess. So I'll show a few things that I find really helpful when working here in ScreenFlow. The first is something I do before we really get to the like making a video part, and I have this custom background set up on my screen because my MacBook Pro, the resolution isn't like a 16:9 aspect ratio. You kind of have to do a little bit of guesswork sometimes to get your windows to fit perfectly within that 16:9 aspect ratio. So I made a little desktop background that shows a few different sizes of a 16:9 ratio. So I will shape my windows, whether I'm recording a screencast for Sketch or it's in Chrome or whatever. I try to get things hitting this for like a full size window, or these smaller ones if for some reason I need the window to be more compressed. I shape it to that. That way I don't have to do any cropping or editing of the actual window itself once I get it into ScreenFlow. Now I'll show you something else that I do quite frequently. This is a working file from one of my recent projects that just launched. And as you can see, I have a lot of stuff going on. Bunch of audio tracks, bunch of annotations, and a lot of clips, a lot of individual cuts and transitions and video actions. But I want to call out just one thing specifically. Sometimes you need to bring a bunch of clips together, but also have them performing the same video action. And that's not going to work if, say, you have, these 4 clips right here. If I want them to all be doing like some sort of continuous zoom in or zoom out, or maybe they're all tilting on an axis, it's really hard to make that happen consistently across all those frames. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but it's not really worth the effort. So I'll show it just as a simple example with this. This is a nested clip that I made from a bunch of, I'll click into it, a bunch of different images that I've dragged in. And so when you play through, it's just kind of like a fast sequence of images changing over time. And I wanted all of these images to start zoomed in a little bit, and then we just slowly zoom out. And it'd be kind of difficult to do that in a consistent way across all these images. So what I did, I made a nested clip, and then I just dropped a video action over it that starts at 121% scale and just moves down over time. Simple, but helpful, kind of effective when you're trying to figure out how do I apply some sort of movement across a bunch of different frames. So nested clips are great. And then the last thing I would just call out, this may be basic information for some people, it might be new for others, but there's 2 things that I think I use more than anything here in ScreenFlow. And I'll just do an example here. I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. Okay, so this is a clip, and you see this little rabbit icon. That means I've sped it up. You can do that by clicking double clicking and adjusting the speed here, or you can just click the track, hold down Option on your Mac, and go to the edge, and you'll see when you hold down Option, you see that little timing icon come up, and you can just click and drag, and instead of trimming the clip shorter, you're speeding up or slowing it down, which you can see in that speed indicator in the middle there. That's super, super useful. I use that all the time. And then finally, I've talked to some people that don't know, you can hit the T on your keyboard and split a single clip instead of doing things with this playhead, which can lead to things like that happening across all your tracks. All right, that's what I got. Thanks for having me.
Anything else you want to share before we sign off here?
Some shameless self-promotion. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Orsow, and also visit my company's website, InVisionApp.com. Not my company, but
the company.
It might as well be. I love working there, so I treat it like my baby, I guess.
Great. Well, we'll put the links again to your Twitter to how people can find you, find more of your work. You're really inspiring. I think that the stuff you're doing, you're not giving yourself enough credit. You're doing some amazing stuff that not many people, I think other people would aspire to, including me. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us, to share some of your wisdom and your tips and expertise. And we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, Andrew.
That was our interview with Andy, and I thought it was great. I hope you guys got a lot of value out of that. As I said earlier, Andy is one of those users that we could all aspire to be with ScreenFlow. He's been using it for years, and he uses it at this level that the rest of us can really only think about because, or dream to aspire to, because he's doing some of the best product design and marketing videos out there that you can find for, I think, anyone. And he's doing it all for InVision. So he's an excellent editor, an excellent designer, and a really powerful user of ScreenFlow. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that. If you have some questions about anything you saw, or you want to leave a comment, please do so on our Facebook page here, or you can always tweet at us at @ScreenFlow on Twitter, and we'll get back to you that way. If you have any other comments or suggestions or feedback, or if you'd like to see some other interviews in the future with other power users, or if you yourself are a power user, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. We always like to share how people are using ScreenFlow and how they can improve other users with their knowledge and the way that they use ScreenFlow and apply it in their own jobs or lives or hobbies and so forth. So keep screencasting, and we'll see you next week. And let's see, for episode 10. Stay tuned, and catch you next time.